whether we like it or not, retirement is changing in some very significant ways. And whether we like it or not, we're not going back ever to the way our parents were able to retire. I've been a financial advisor for over 20 years, and these are the major changes I've seen. And the first and maybe most important is people think they need a lot more money to retire today than they used to. And even on an inflation-adjusted basis. There's several surveys that are done every year. How much does the average American think that they need to retire? In 2023, the survey results were $1.5 million, which is a lot of money. I'm going to get to how many people have $1 million in retirement savings, and you're going to be surprised, not in a good way. But the survey was just updated, and now that number is almost $2 million. People think they need $2 million to retire. So how many people have just $1 million in retirement savings? It turns out it's less than 5% of all Americans. It's 3% have $1 million or more in their retirement savings. But yet now people think they need $2 million. And it's fair to critique that and say, hey, Azul, it's not just your retirement savings accounts, it's everything. And that's true. And the Federal Reserve does a study every 3 years called the Survey Consumer Finance, where they look at our overall picture, not just how much money we have in retirement savings, but our overall net worth, the value of everything, less the debt that we owe. So for most of us, that would be all of our savings accounts, plus the value of our house. And you know what that is for people that are 55 to 64 years old, getting ready to retire? It's about $365,000. And then for the next stage, for the stage of 65 to 74, it actually goes up to $410,000, then it drops back down. But that is a far cry from the $2 million that people think that they need. I'm going to get up here, let's go for a walk. I'm going to explain why I think people feel that they need so much money, more money now than they did just a few short years ago. And the first one, frankly, is life is getting more expensive, right? We've all seen runaway inflation. Thankfully, that has started to dampen down, right? Inflation now, if you believe the government numbers, are about back down to 2.5% as I record this. But it wasn't that long ago that inflation was 8 or 9%. In fact, over a 4-year period, prices increased by over 25%. That's an enormous move, right? Whatever we had in our savings account was essentially 25% less because of inflation. Now, fortunately, the stock market has kept up with that. So, yeah, that's the biggest, one of the big changes that I see is people talking about how much money do they need to retire. And unfortunately, this robs us of what I call the youth of our senior years. The years where we're still healthy, we're still active, we have our mental acuity, we have money, and we have our health. And that's super critical, right? That's the trifecta. Those are the 3 things you need to really have total freedom, to be able to do whatever you want in your life. And it's a short period of time where we have all 3, time, health, and money, and we need to take advantage of it. And if we're locked into this thought that I need to achieve this much money in order to retire, $2 million, boy, 95% of Americans are never, 99% of Americans, truthfully, are never going to get there. So one thing that's driving that change is inflation. Another thing that's driving that change, frankly, is the financial advising industry. We have a model that we use. It's called the Monte Carlo model that can give retirees, we look at how much people say that they'd like to spend in retirement. And we can do a statistical analysis and say, what's the likelihood that you run out of money during your lifetime? What's the likelihood that you outlive your money, which none of us want to do. We all want to live long, but we want to make sure we have enough money. And you know, there is no certainty in the world. We don't know what tax rates are going to be in 2 years. We certainly don't know what inflation is going to be in a couple years. And we don't know what the stock market's going to deliver. So yes, this is the best tool that financial advisors have, but it can lead people to say, well, 97% certainty of never running out of money is better than 80%, is better than 70%. And I don't think that's the case, right? Because let's say you have an 80% certainty. That means 80% certainty of never running out of money. Yes, the bad news is you have a 20% likelihood that you're going to have to make some adjustments. But you know what? If you keep working 2, 3, 5 years to go from that 80% to go to 95%, you're giving up your healthiest, your most active years. So you have 100% likelihood of losing those years. Personally, for me, and this isn't financial advice, but I'm okay with some risk that I may have to adjust. I'm not going to run out of money. I'm going to adjust as I go. And I should say that there's even, in my opinion, a better tool than a Monte Carlo simulation, a better tool than the 4% rule, which many of us have heard of, that says, you know, if you have like a 70% stock allocation, 30% bonds. A gentleman by the name of Bill Bengen came up with this formula that there's a very high likelihood, if we're just spending 4% a year out of our account, and we adjust that each year for inflation so the purchasing power stays the same, there's a very high likelihood that over a 30-year period we're never going to run out of money, and that's the good news. But I think there's a better tool now, and this is where you're re-evaluating every year. It's called risk-based guardrails, and we look at life and we look at what's happening, and you know what? If we don't have those negative stock returns in the early years, we might be able to spend more money than that 4%, and we look at that during the journey. If we get unlucky and we have bad stock market returns, and maybe we're spending a little bit more than what we were planning, then we're going to have to adjust down. But it's based on reality, and we adjust as we go. And that's another big change that's happening with retirement. It's not set it and forget it. It's let's look at our reality, let's look at the situation, and let's adjust. The other thing that's happening, another major change in retirement is frankly a really good thing, which is I think we have a much better understanding now of the importance of doing what we can to stay physically fit, to stay active, to keep ourselves healthy in retirement. Because remember, it's those three things, right? We need to have money, obviously enough money. Then we want time, and we free up all 168 hours a week of our time by retiring. And then the third one is health. And I think a lot of us have learned, boy, investing an hour or 2 hours a day in our health is time and money very well spent. And in order to get this time, remember those three factors. One of the most important is time, and that's why I made this video up here that talks about why waiting to 65 to retire might be a big mistake. I'll see you in that video. Bye-bye.